Good morning. I like that excitement. I'm excited too. Just as a sign of U-School respect, let's make sure we take our hoods off, and obviously we shouldn't have any earbuds in our ears. But today, I'm really excited, guys, because we get to welcome entrepreneur Daymond John to NSU University School. Let's let him hear it. Let's let him hear it. Awesome. Mr. John, as I know you guys know, because you went through an assignment to get ready for this today, Mr. John has come a long way from turning a $40 budget into a $6 billion fashion game changer. Yeah, throughout his career, Daymond has continued to be an entrepreneur in every sense of the word. He is not only a pioneer in the fashion industry, but a shark on the 4-time Emmy Award-winning show, The Shark Tank. A New York Times best-selling author, a branding guru, a highly sought-after motivational speaker, and that's who you get to hear from today. One more time, please help me welcome Mr. Daymond John.
Hey, what's up, everybody? How you doing? Well, first of all, I want to make sure I acknowledge Jacob and Melina for having me here. Thank you so much for the whole family. All right, thank you. And all of my future sharks in the room. And I will start off by apologizing for Kevin O'Leary's behavior. So, we have a bunch of questions, right?
Yes. So the way this is going to work, guys, is thank you for submitting your questions. You really submitted some great questions. I'm going to read a bunch of the highlighted ones to Mr. John. And at the end, if there's time, we will take questions from the crowd. So the first question for you, Mr. John, is what has been the most rewarding part about being on Shark Tank?
That's a funny question because at first I went on the Shark Tank. So the story of going on the Shark Tank is that I was managing the Kardashians for their first couple of years. And they called me and said, well, you want to be on Shark Tank? And I said, well, they said you can't do any other show but ours, but I had promised Chloe that I was going to be on 3 separate episodes of the Kardashians. 3 minutes apiece, 9 minutes total. They said you cannot be on any other show. And I said, all right, well, I have to pass. I cannot be on Shark Tank. And then Chloe fired me. And the funny thing is, Chloe said, the world needs to know who I am, and she would never get in my way. So she wanted me to go on Shark Tank. And when I went on Shark Tank initially, I went on because it was back in 2008, and I had 10 clothing lines, and 8 of them were dead because nobody could pay their rent, so they're not buying other clothing lines. And I wanted to be able to go to a Macy's and not only sell them clothing, but sell them electronics, sell them cosmetics and things like that, because people will always want to put us all in a box. They think that you can only do one thing. So I went on the Shark Tank to get really good deals. But I realized later on that Shark Tank was much bigger than getting good deals. Shark Tank was about me starting to see younger people such as you do business a whole nother way that I would have never thought of doing business. I mean, think about it. Instagram really only came out in 2012. Instagram wasn't even out yet. I was doing the same old thing of selling directly to a store, like hoping somebody would buy it. I didn't know like how your younger generation can put things on TikTok and various other things where I was depending purely on a store. So what the best thing about Shark Tank is that I get to learn from the new generation on how they would do things that I was doing the old way. And that helped me become a better, more rounded business person. So I think that's the best part about it is I get to, even though I learn from my fellow sharks, I learn from the people up there, but I'm constantly a student of life, and that's why I have the most successful product in Shark Tank history, which is called Bombas Socks. Now, how many people have Bombas Socks? Anybody know about Bombas Socks? Right. Think about it. It's socks. It's nothing new. The second best-selling product in Shark Tank history is something called the Scrub Daddy. It's a sponge. Not my deal. It's Lori's. But it's a sponge. So think about it. The top 2 selling products in Shark Tank history are socks and sponges. And everybody's trying to make all this new technology and various other things, but everybody needs socks and everybody needs sponges. And I learned that on Shark Tank because I already had 1 million units of socks that I couldn't sell myself. I'm the kind of person that if I wanted to sell socks before Shark Tank, I had to go slip into your laundry room and steal one sock out of the basket to sell socks. Now, all of a sudden, I'm selling socks directly to the consumer because of Shark Tank. So the bottom line is, I learned so many ways and new ways of business from Shark Tank.
Excellent. Going back, how did your career get started?
My career got started when hip-hop really started to grow, but what happened was because I was such a fan of hip-hop, the people that we were dressing a certain way, but these clothes weren't designed by young, fashionable kids like ourselves. They were designed by older people, and they would take our money and say, "We don't like you. We don't appreciate you." And because there was a difference, and you may think that, like let's say a designer was making a pair of jeans, and I wore a pair. I was supposed to wear a pair of 34, but I wore a pair of 38. And they would take my money and say, "Well, you're not supposed to wear a pair of 38. It's too baggy." But they didn't realize that at that time I was so poor that I never knew if I would ever be able to afford a pair of their jeans. So the reason I wore 38 was because I needed a lot of room to break dance. But also, hopefully I'd grow into it, because that was the only gift I can ever buy myself for what I thought was the next 3 or 4 years. And they didn't have what I thought, what we would call empathy, because they didn't want to respect the difference in what we had, even though I loved their brand. So I came up with something called FUBU, For Us, By Us. And I know as kids and young adults, you have a lot of differences, and a lot of people thought that the name FUBU I bought was about you need to be of a certain color. But I was fortunate enough when my parents got divorced, my father, who I call my father now, happens to be of the Jewish faith, and he always told me, be pro-black but never anti-anything else, and never become the thing you're fighting against. And I created this name FUBU of an African-American art that was created in the Bronx that I wanted to share with the entire world. And I would find that we had more in common than we had apart. And so it was Good Friday. It was actually probably about I don't know, it's almost coming up to my anniversary. It was 1989 Good Friday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I made a bunch of hats at home the night before. They looked like a ski cap, but instead of the ball on the top, just a string. And I stood outside on the corner, and I sold $800 worth of hats in 1 hour. And it was that moment that I realized that I was onto something. And I remember saying to myself, I'm never going to work for anybody ever else again for the rest of my life, because I made these hats in my own hand. It was my ability to show value to the customer, and I love the customer. I could talk to them about hip-hop forever. I remember saying, I'm never going to work for anybody ever again for the rest of my life. But I ended up working at Red Lobster for 5 years after that. But I still started that day in 1989 when I sold $800 worth of hats standing on the corner.
So from the corner to all that, fantastic.
Yeah,
I think that deserves it.
I appreciate it.
So Red Lobster to FUBU. The next question. Were there times when you felt that you needed to do something else or wanted to give up on FUBU or your other companies?
I think that the times that I wanted to really give up, I really was honest with myself, and I asked myself, why was I doing it? I think that the 3 pillars to success, so the three things that really help you with success is knowing your why, and then setting goals, and then doing your homework or whatever the case is to accomplish what you want to do. But if you're only doing it because society is telling you, or you're hanging out with a group of people who are saying, well, that's cool, that's not, well, what's going to happen is you're going to set the wrong goals, and if you set the wrong goals, then you're going to do the wrong homework to accomplish things. So I think that when I was doing it, so FUBU, if you ever saw the brand, it has a big 05 on all the stuff. The reason why there's a big 05 is because we always hoped it would be 5 people, 5 of us friends. But we went through 10 people who were that 5th member. We ended up settling on 4 because that one person wouldn't stay around. But the other 3 that stayed with me, every time I wanted to quit, they would not allow me to quit. Every time they wanted to quit, I wouldn't let them quit. And we were doing something that we were excited about. It was like Christmas. Every morning we woke up to discover a new way to make something, a new way to market something, a new person was wearing it. And I think that that is what really made it something that I didn't want to give up. Being around a team of a small group of people who we had the same exact goal and we were excited about it. And I think that was the most critical thing because, of course, everybody here is in teams, a lot of people. But, you know, if you have team members who will not let you quit and you know that they got your back, that was probably the thing that kept us going.
Does that bring you back to high school listening to the old bell?
Yeah, good. Okay.
What were the biggest challenges you faced when building FUBU?
The biggest challenge I faced was not knowing what I didn't know. It was, I didn't have a formal education. I didn't go to college, which I regret. I did the thing of, hey, I'm going to take off a year, and I didn't go to college. I ended up going back and taking some form of training. It was, I didn't know what I didn't know. And a lot of people, when they get stagnant in their business or whatever the case is, they tell you, well, that can't be done. But every single thing can be done. You know, I remember I was driving down the street one day with my mother, and I happened to live by John F. Kennedy, and I remember this huge plane was landing one day, and I said to my mother one day, I said, Ma, how do men and women build these huge, massive machines? And she says, son, anything in this world that's been done, whether the car we're in, the road we're in, the lights, the airplane, it's all been done by one person that had one idea that took one action. And she said, why can't it be you? And I didn't have a reply for her. So after that, anything that I've ever seen, and I said I want to accomplish, I didn't know what I didn't know, but I knew that somebody has done it before me in some way, fashion, form, or sense. So it really became figuring it out. And a lot of people think that being an entrepreneur, or even if you end up working in a company is just as great as being an entrepreneur. Trust me. Mark Zuckerberg has made more millionaires and billionaires than most people, for the people that work for him and or you work with him. But I think that a lot of people think entrepreneurs, we walk in the room as these hard, tough people that don't need any help. Entrepreneurs actually walk in the room very vulnerable. I walk in a room, I'm very confident about what I do. But if you want to get a team behind you, the best thing to ever say is when you walk in a room is, I know this. Nobody can mess with me when it comes to this, but I don't know that. And if you're willing to help me with that, I'm willing to help you with this. And then you start creating a team. I grew up all those years where I was trying to be so cool when I walked in a room, and I was like, well, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm supposed to be able to make all the decisions. I'm supposed to know every single thing. I'm in charge of everything. I can hire and fire people. But I didn't get to meet new people when I did that. When I walked in the room, though, with confidence and said, I know this, well, then other people said, well, I know that. Let's get together. And as we call it, innovation, let's create bigger and better things together. So it was, once I started being vulnerable, saying, I don't know this, you know, people love to get behind you when they think that you need help. It's kind of the old story of, if you're driving down the highway, you see somebody sitting on top of a car with a gas can, well, you think they called AAA or somebody's on the way or whatever the case is, they're fine. But if you drive down the highway, you see somebody out there pushing the car by themselves, you pull over and you start to push. Or you find a way to help them. Because when people feel like they can help you, they want to fight for you. And then you want to reciprocate that and do the same.
Powerful advice. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
We're going to shift to work-life balance and time management. I got two questions in this category for you. How do you balance your work life with keeping yourself healthy mentally, and do you ever feel like your work consumes you at times?
Yeah, you know, work-life balance, I think it's called work-life harmony. I think you figure it out, like, you know, there's no one answer to it, and I reset it every single, I would say, 3 months. There is no one formula to it, because if you're an A-type personality, you're always going to want to do more when you find that extra time. And I think it's really being in control. So I find that most people don't schedule their personal life. They schedule everything else. They schedule what time you got to be on the school, on a bus, on a plane, train, automobile, on a Zoom, but you don't schedule the times that you will go do a sport, or you will walk the beach, or you will, you know, have dinner, or have to spend time. So what happens is I schedule my life within half an hour to 1 hour blocks, and I steal away time whenever I can. You know, I will steal away an hour to walk on the beach, or an hour to walk here, or I'll be in another city, and I will go and do a tour in another city and go check out the city. The first couple of years of business, I traveled the planet, and the entire planet was a hotel room, an airport, a conference room, and maybe a restaurant. And I went to every country, and I never saw anything. It was till that moment when I stopped and said, why don't I just steal away 2 hours or 4 hours and go and walk the city? And I started to enjoy the entire world. Same with my health, same with everything else. But there's no one answer to it. What you will do today in your work-life balance or work-life harmony will not be the same in next year, because you'll have new friends, you'll have new obligations, you'll have new interests. So you have to always just adjust it. It's inventory. It's the same thing. But it's the only thing you can never get back is time. You can never get back time.
Awesome. What would you say are the favorite parts and the least favorite parts of your job today?
The favorite parts of my job is being able to be around a lot of people and learn from them, and get to see people empower themselves, their family, their customers, and bring something to life. I think that's the best part. I think the challenging part, the biggest challenging part with me is when am I at what point, when some other people are not working or a situation is not right, how much time do you invest in a person or a situation to know that you've exhausted all of the possibilities? Because some people will just not get what you're doing, and it has nothing to do with you. Some people will not step up, and you will take it personally, like, I have this great idea, or I'm treating this person great, and they're not stepping up. But it has nothing to do with you. They've been taught, or their understanding of success or what they want to do is totally different than yours. It has nothing to do with you, and you take it personal because you're like, I have the best interest for this business or this person or this education, and I know that I mean well, and I know if this person does this, because I've learned this already, it will equate to this, but this person is just not stepping up. And I think that's the hardest part about when you have to cut people off, or when you have to leave a situation, because you have to think about, I can spend that amount of time or that amount of energy and effort on somebody else who will appreciate it, who will step up, who will be of value to me, and I can be of value to them. And I think that's the hardest part of defining when do you want, because you also are going to have this kind of burden on you on, did I abandon that person? Or the burden on, did I abandon this person because I was so busy working on this? So I think that's probably the hardest part of a business. And I think in friendships too. You're going to have a lot of friends who are very, very needy, who are needy for the right reasons. You're going to have a lot of friends that are needy, but not necessarily the right reasons, and you're going to have to try to balance that time on how much time you're taking away from yourself or your family or your friends to help those.
Awesome. Very important message. Thank you. Shifting now to talking about some obstacles and struggles. How has being a black man in America affected you in your business dealings?
That's a tough question. Who asked that one? No. That's a challenging question because, we're all going to have differences, and I've been around the world, and many of you have, and I've seen people who live in deplorable situations, and not necessarily because of the color of their skin, and maybe because of their gender, maybe because of the class that they were born in, and there's always going to be some form of somebody who wants to hold it against you because you're different. I think that we can't get away from, and everybody's going to have, if you were born with money, well, then people are going to say, well, then you have money. If you're born because of a gender or your race or your color or your creed, somebody's going to hold it against you in some sense. I think that I always looked at a room when I walked into the room of how can I bring value to the person in the room. So being a black man in America, yeah, it is challenging. I was pulled over by the cops many times as a young kid. I had police officers put guns to my head and various other things and try to lock me up for things that I never did. But I think that I tried to find other people who needed me more instead of people who didn't need me. I didn't try to fight against the grain. So if I went to pitch somebody an idea, I didn't go home and say at first, well, it's because I'm black, or because I don't have money, or because whatever. I said to myself, did I ask them the right questions? Did I study them well enough to see where I can bring value in them? So the story about FUBU is when I got my deal, distribution deal, I didn't get it from Tommy Hilfiger, Ralph Lauren, or Nike. That's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I got it from Samsung's textile division that was number 200, who want to be number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Why am I saying that? Because as a black man, or as whoever you are in this room, sooner or later, if you study who you're trying to pitch to or work to, if they don't understand it, they don't value it, then you just kiss another frog and kiss another frog and kiss another frog. You will sooner or later get down to somebody who sees value in what you're doing. I'll give you an example. If you go up and down Main Street in almost any city in America, a lot of these stores who people are maybe 40 and older who don't understand TikTok and Instagram and various other things, they're sitting with a bunch of goods that they paid for and nobody's walking by those stores anymore. Well, if I was a kid, I'm going to go, if I like some stuff that I like in there, I would say, listen, if I put this on my TikTok or Instagram or various other things and whatever I sell, can I make 50% off of it? Will you give that to me? Well, they already paid for the goods. They don't have TikTok and those type of things. You can sit there and make $1,000, $2,000, $10,000, $100,000. You're going to help them because they were going to sit there with their store, potentially be out of business. Why am I saying that about being a black man? Well, because what happens is you'll sooner or later find somebody who needs what you have. You would have never had to lay out any kind of money for those goods. You would have already been doing what you're already doing on social media. You would have been selling those goods and making money. So in any form of a relationship, when I was faced with being a black man, I said, where can I add value to this person? And then sooner or later, the whole idea of the color of my skin went away. Now, we do live in a country or in a world that people do see differences in each other. You're not going to get around a lot of that. I just try to pay attention more to the people that value me, that I can add value to. And some of that ugly stuff, it will exist. And I try to not be around anybody who thinks or talks like that about anybody. Right? So I surround myself with the right people, and I try to empower people, and I let the ignorance be what it is, because you're always going to have ignorance and hatred and nasty people. But I have found that I have had my success when I'm able to speak to somebody who was not like me at all, and then we find a common thing that we both like about a product, a company, or deal we're doing, and it makes it even better because now I appeal to their culture, and it appeals to mine, and that's where I found success. If I'm just talking to only the people that look like me and act like me and think like me, I'm talking to myself. So.
Great. In your opinion, what are the key qualities and or characteristics that separate successful entrepreneurs from the rest?
Successful entrepreneurs fail and fail fast. They don't wait for things to be perfect. There is no perfect time. There's only the perfect use of time. So by the time my competitors will have launched something successfully, I will have failed 20 times, and I would have made it much more successful because I will make sure that I've gotten all the things out of the way that I need to do. But you got to fail small. People and fail small and fail fast. I've also talked about it. Successful entrepreneurs are the ones who work off their team. I always say that my team is, I'm Batman and they're Robin, but most of the time I'm Robin and they're Batman. I wouldn't have them around me or hire them or various other things if they weren't smarter than me. This whole, again, it goes back to the whole idea that a really successful entrepreneur is constantly learning. They're vulnerable. They ask a lot of questions. They fail and fail fast, and they get it out of the way, and they figure things out. Too many people, entrepreneurs, I see too many entrepreneurs fail because of their ego. They're claiming they want to do something. If you want to be famous, then be famous. I opened up speaking about the Kardashians. When Kim and I used to hang out, she was very clear on what she said. She said, I want to be famous. She didn't say, I want to open up this kind of organization, this and that, so I can be on the face of the hang tag. She said, I want to be famous. Simple as that. And there's nothing wrong with that. So what I say is the successful entrepreneur, they're vulnerable. They know what they want to do. They work with other people, and they make mistakes. They get over them quickly. And they know exactly what and they're very honest about what they want to accomplish. No matter how bad you may think it is, as long as it's important to them.
That's great. That actually ties in with what we teach them quite a bit, is accepting failure as just the part of the learning process.
Failure, I was interviewing somebody, a very famous person. She said, failure is more like a pebble in your shoe. It's just annoying. That's all it is, but it's part of the process, right? Like, what did any one of us know how to do well when we started out doing? It's just like a damn pebble in your shoe. It's annoying. But if you allow it to consume you, when you try to make this great big, you try to build Rome all of a sudden, well, then you have a lot to fail from, right? Actually, in opening small businesses, the number one reason that small businesses fail, is actually what they call overfunding. They have too much money. And most people will say, well, what are you talking about? It's a small business. Because what happens is a small business, I always use the example, let's say you had some really great cupcakes that your grandmother passed down through your family, and these are the most amazing cupcakes. And what a small business entrepreneur often will think was, well, I have these cupcakes, I need to open a store. So they go and get a huge loan. They go and sign a lease. They got this great store, right? Everything in the store looks great, right? You got a cupcake-looking register, cupcake hats, everything is really great. But you never sold one cupcake. And what happens is you find out that, the cupcakes have peanuts in them, and there's a kid that lives next to the store that has a peanut allergy that you have to block off 4 square miles. You find out there was a little old lady down the street in the church who's been selling cupcakes for the last 20 years, that everybody's really amazing and addicted to her cupcakes. And you don't really know how to work the refrigeration system and all that. You never sold one cupcake. So what happens now? Well, you have a loan on your house. You go bankrupt. You have to take down the sign. You have to break the lease. You have 7 years of bad credit. You never sold one cupcake. Just go out and get a kiosk at the mall for a weekend, or maybe go to some place that sells, champagne, and do a trade with them to sell cupcakes and champagne for an evening, something like that. But usually what people do is they try to build Rome. I see it all the time on Shark Tank. They have so much money they borrowed. They did all this type of that. Hey, DJ Irie, come on out here, DJ Irie. Come on, say hello to everybody. Everybody, this is DJ Irie. And it's because of Irie Foundation and the donation that brought me here. Irie, we're going to ask you some questions in a minute, man. I feel like I'm being interrogated up here. All right, so bottom line is what we were saying. Bottom line is, that's usually why businesses fail. Small businesses, they try to build so much in such a small period of time when they should have just taken affordable steps.
What would you say is the biggest mistake and or regret you've made in business?
The biggest mistakes I ever made in business was not having financial intelligence and not going to college and taking business courses because I never knew how money worked. And so when I first made $20 million, I blew it within the first year by not knowing how money works, because money is something that we're always going to work off of and need. So I didn't know what credit was. I didn't know what taxes were. And I didn't know how to use money. And I think that is critical. And a lot of people, we've been taught that money's bad, or you have to have money. You don't have to have money, excessive amount of money. And I almost lost my business as well. I almost went bankrupt 2 times when I didn't have any money, and almost went bankrupt 1 time when I had money. So it was learning how money works. Money's pretty simple how it works, but the companies that market to us all these things of how loans and various other things, we're so hypnotized by that. And money's pretty simple. If you have $3, $3 million, $3 trillion, pretty simple. When $3 comes in, it's very simple. The first dollar you got to pay for what you really need to live: mortgage, rent, food. The second dollar is an investment. It can be an investment in a public company. It can be an investment in your education. It could be an investment in anything else. And the third dollar is what you would like to have but don't have to have. And if you don't spend that third dollar, you put it back in bucket number 2. What happens normally is bucket number 2 becomes so big that it flows into bucket 1 and 3. But as people that I normally see, what they do is they do it the exact opposite. They spend number 3 first because they work hard and they want to treat themselves. They never get to number 2, and then they pay 20% interest on their credit cards for number 1, and it corrodes them from the bottom. It's really simple. At 18 years old, or even the age you are right now, if you put away $100 a month, if just $100 deducted out of your whatever the case is a month, by 50 years old, I believe it equates to $1.7 million. And that's if the market just does exactly what it does. So it was the lack of financial intelligence, the lack of trying to study and understand money. That was my biggest issue. And everybody's going to need to operate off of some form of money.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm going to shift to motivations and inspirations.
I hear you. What?
Motivations and inspirations. The first question is about your mom. What role did your mom play in your success, and did she believe in you and help you? And how was that along the way?
Yeah, Mom was critical. It was just my mother and I, for a long period of time. I told you my parents had got divorced. Again, I've shared some of the things. I'm dyslexic. How many people here are dyslexic? Anybody? Okay. Well, just 20% of the world is dyslexic. 8 of the 12 sharks are dyslexic. Einstein was dyslexic. 7 presidents were dyslexic. 40% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic. So Mom taught me different ways to absorb information, because her and I were pretty poor, and she was like, "Oh, Daymond, I got to cook you food for the next 4 days. I'm going to be out working and stuff like that. Why don't you get on this kind of like this little box?" And I was really short, still am, right? She was like, "Why don't you get on this little box and read me this stuff? But I'm going to have you read more numbers." So she would have me read Cranes and the Financial Times and all those type of things when she was getting ready for work. And I was about 8 or 9 years old. It was start having me understand, these kind of things like money and various other things. She would also just tell me to use common sense. A lot of people just don't apply common sense. She would say, if this can't be done this way, it's been done before, how can you apply it? So it was pretty much, I think that it was her way of teaching me common sense and all the kind lessons that she would teach me. But it was also the discipline. When I got to a certain age, she was like, "You're at a certain age. You pay rent now. You get a job. That's it." So at 16 years old, when she saw that I was hanging out and I was taking my money, I was trying to buy shoes and coats and stuff like that. She said, but it's time to pay rent. And that discipline of what she taught me was it. And I think the most powerful thing she did was, I was acting up when I was in the 7th grade. And I remember the teacher said, Daymond, I know your parents are going through a divorce, and I know that, they told my mother, listen, Daymond is acting up. He wants you guys to get back together, but we're going to pass him from the 7th grade to the 8th grade if he passes last test. Well, that night, before I had to go do the test, I played basketball that night, and I can't play basketball. I partied, I hung out, and I came in, and I got a 30 on the test. Now, you usually get a 30 just by spelling your name right on the test. The teacher said, we're going to pass him. My mother said, no, you're not. You're going to leave him back. And I said, this is crap. My mother, no way in the world is going to leave me back for the 7th grade. And she said, by the way, you're going to stay in the house the whole summer. I said, no way in the world. She works 2 jobs already. And that time, cell phones weren't out, so she couldn't find out when she was working 2 jobs. She couldn't tell if I was out, playing in the streets. She went and got a 3rd job to have a babysitter watch me. And then when the next year came around, she put me in a really bad school because she was paying for me to go to another school, and I was back in the 7th grade. And what I realized at that point was that my mother is not going to save me, that my life was my life. And I had to repeat that year in school, and I got my ass whipped a couple of times by those kids in that school. And I realized that at the end of the day, the decisions that I made in life had nothing to do with my mother or anybody else, and that I was going to have to pay for my debt no matter what. So I was either going to make decisions that it was going to reward my life, or I was going to make decisions where it was going to penalize my life. I think that's the most powerful thing she ever did. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm pretty mad at her for it still today.
What advice would you give our student body about the role of mentors?
Mentors are the most powerful thing you'll ever find. You'll learn through life through either 2 ways. It'll be either through your mentors or your mistakes. Mentors can be in a book, but most likely they are a lot of these people in this room. My first mentor is always going to be your first mentor. It's probably going to be your mother or your father or your family members. But after that, it's going to be your teachers. It's going to be people that have dedicated their life to pass on the knowledge that they've learned and or to try to help you, that have volunteered their time in that. And I know that I often didn't respect a lot of, or didn't, I looked at the teachers as somebody that I had to report to, but it was those teachers that even when I was dyslexic, it was 1 or 2 of them that said, there's something special about you, and you may not absorb information this way, but you need to think about it like this. Mentors are going to be coaches. I still, even till today, I seek out mentors. Life is a series of mentors. And if you're fortunate enough in life, you'll get to the point where not only your mentor will take you to... And the best part about a mentor, you want mentors that they don't need nothing from you. They're doing it because they want to do it for you. I love working with people that don't need me. And you'll find that, the most successful thing is when you're able to bring back knowledge to your mentors. Sooner or later, you get to that point in life where they've taught you so well that you can't wait to pay them back. So mentors are absolutely, absolutely critical. However, what's in it for the mentor when you approach them? I get asked to mentor people all the time. Now, people walk up to me and say, hey, just teach me about, everything. I'm like, why would I do that for you? Now, if somebody said, well, I heard you're part of the Petco Foundation and you love to save animals, maybe I'll donate 2 hours a week at the animal shelter, and for you to get on a call with me once a month for a half an hour, well, then that's the person I want to work with. A mentor is not here just to give you everything just because you think you deserve it. You have to work for that time and work for that mentor's respect, because most mentors want to give because they were somebody who a mentor gave to them, but you have to still be able to reciprocate it and not just think they're around here just to give you the answers.
Excellent. Moving on now back to Shark Tank.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned this, but other than maybe the socks or the scrubber, was there any product that stood out that really surprised you?
Hundreds. We don't know anything about those people on Shark Tank. We don't know anything about that product. They come up there. We don't, an average pitch is 1 hour long. We have 16 cameras shooting it. So that's 16 hours of footage for you to see 8 minutes. And we don't know anything about it. And that's what we love about Shark Tank. Plenty. Ring doorbell. Now, that is the most successful product in Shark Tank history that did not get an investment in, but I didn't understand it when it came. It was called Doorbot at the time. I was like, why would anybody want to see a video of you on the camera? So, of course, there's so many, I can't even think of it. It literally is hundreds. I've seen now on Shark Tank, I think I've seen 2,200 pitches. So it has to be at least 200 things that have absolutely shocked me in good ways and bad ways.
And what were some of those, what the next question asks about what made you reject some of those proposals? And it ties in with a question about, are you looking more at the product or the person selling it?
Well, it's a good question. I'm looking at the person almost always because I don't need to work with anybody to make money. If I want, I will send my money over to the market. They're not going to wake up Steve Jobs from the dead. Elon Musk is not going to call me and ask me how to fix a car. I will either make money or lose money. I don't have to talk to anybody. So if I'm going to work with somebody, I got to like the person. I got to be able to talk to the person. They have to be a problem solver. I have to be somebody who we're on the same page with each other and we want to accomplish something. So it's always going to be the person. Again, it's socks is socks. They came on doing $700,000. They're going to do $1.5 billion this year for Bombas socks. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. But why did I want to work with them? Because every pair of socks that they sell, they give a pair away to the homeless. And they don't just give a pair away. They're in the shelters. They're in hundreds of shelters, and they know the homeless by name because they care. And that has empowered me to understand more about what the homeless face and things of that nature. And that's why the customer is in it too, because you can buy socks from anybody, right? But if you find out, so my daughter one day said to me, Daddy, how many times you gave this year? And I said, well, I wait till the end of the year, I give away this. She said, Daddy, I gave 5 times this year. I was like, it was only January. How you gave 5 times? She said, because every time I bought this, I helped clean up the ocean. Every time I bought this, I helped stop human trafficking. And every time I bought this, I helped another person who didn't have a pair of socks. And by the way, I'm buying the socks for Christmas for other people so they can help other people. So it's really those things are the surprising things that have helped me about how entrepreneurs care about other people on Shark Tank. And those are the people that I want to be in business with. Because really entrepreneurs, they don't wake up in the morning and say, how can I make money off of this? Usually an entrepreneur, the successful ones, woke up and said, there's a problem that I thought somebody else was going to solve. Nobody else is going to solve it. I'm going to solve it. Or I have something that's going to bring somebody joy. It's never been, I'm going to make $1 gajillion. That's what Mark Cuban would call a wantrepreneur. Real entrepreneurs wake up and say, how am I going to bring joy or solve a problem that somebody else has? I thought somebody else was going to do it. Nobody else is going to do it. I'm going to do it. And those are the people that I want to work with.
That's awesome. We actually have a 6th grader in the room that has a similar passion like that I think you'll be interested in later. But the next question talks about the difference between being cautious and taking risks. How do you calculate the risk when you are embarking on a business venture?
It's very hard. So it goes back to taking the affordable steps. Because if you fail and you start to learn things at affordable steps, it also is you have to, again, going back, work-life balance. How much of your time are you willing to allocate? How much money are you willing to allocate? And what are you willing to risk for it. It is very hard, but I think that, and you have to make a lot of hard decisions. You have to say, listen, we're going to try this for, these stages, 30, 60, 90 days. We get to this point, get to that point. And it's that balance of passion against business, because a lot of times you're going to go, well, it's just so great. It's just so great. So really tough question. And there's no one answer to that risk, because if the Bombas Sox guys would never have done that well, I don't think they would have ever stopped. I think they would have gotten a job and still had their sock business at a running at a moderate speed and still been giving, right? The Scrub Daddy person, well, he was trying to bring people joy. I think that, at a certain point, if he didn't make it that far, he probably would have put it aside for a second. So it all depends on what is the end goal and what are you getting from it. Business is not always going to be a monetary thing, a feeling. It may be a charitable thing that you're creating a substantial amount of change out in people. So again, that managing the downside of your risk all depends on the upside of the, what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, awesome. I got one or two more, and then I think
you wanted
some more
something.
questions.
You want
over
something?
here. What would you say for a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs in this? We make our junior class all go through the process of starting it. Advice from a very successful entrepreneur.
So remember, business is really simple, right? You either increase sales or you reduce costs. Whenever you are creating something, you have to ask yourself 3 questions. Why me? Why now? And why this? If you can't clearly answer those questions of what makes you so separate you from it, then you probably should not be in it, or you should probably find a different way to do it. There's only 3 ways to ever deal with a customer. You acquire a new customer, you upsell a current one, or you make one buy more frequently. That's it. That's why I want to supersize everybody's fries. Because acquiring a new customer is 21 times harder than upselling one or making one buy more frequently. And I think there's another saying about there's only 4 reasons why people will buy. To live, to entertain themselves, for education, or to pay somebody to do something they're too lazy to do themselves. When you start learning those fundamentals, I go through those grids every single time that I start or create a new business or I invest in a business. And when that helps me, and about 50% of the time I can't answer any of those questions, I don't invest in it or I don't do it. I'll do it as a hobby. It's a whole different story. Oh, there you go. You got replaced. What's happening?
Good morning. I'm Jacob Cotavelli. I'm Ben Cotavelli's dad and Layla Cotavelli's dad. I want to introduce DJ Ari. Come up over here, join me for a minute. Does everybody know who DJ Ari is? So DJ Ari is a good friend of mine, of the family. Also he used to be how I met him, as the official DJ of the Miami Heat. He now is one of the official DJ of the All-Star Major MLB. Tell them a little bit about what you do. I think they'll love it.
Well, I do a little bit of everything,
You were the official DJ of Jamie Foxx, of Shaquille O'Neal. You were the
Matter of
official
fact, David,
DJ
you can do
of...
it better than me. Well, listen, I'm someone that just fell in love with music at a very early age, figured out how to make a business out of it, and then figuring out how to make a business out of DJing, I figured out how to make a business out of entertaining and having an audience, right? A lot of my success I can directly correlate to this man right here. And I mean that. It's not just, anecdotal. Very early in my career, as a matter of fact, I was coming up in Miami, working hard. I met a guy by the name of DJ LS1, a fellow DJ. And he's like, man, I'm doing all this really cool stuff for FUBU. I had never left Miami to DJ anywhere else. I've never take my records on a plane to go and perform somewhere else. This man was the first person to give me the opportunity to do that. He took me to LA, took me to Vegas, really opened my eyes. A couple years later, we ended up making an arrangement. He actually was my first mentor outside of my parents. And he taught me so much about how to approach life, how to approach business. This man literally changed my life. And a lot of the success that I have today is attributed to Daymond John and his leadership. So thank you, Daymond.
Wow.
I am a living, breathing example of what mentorship can do.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
was
Wow.
listening-
That's crazy. I never heard that. Thank you, Irie. Irie, these are a lot of these young adults here. They love entertainment. They can entertain people in various ways, right? Music and art and various things. Is there anything you would say to them if they want to make a career in the arts?
Well, here's the thing about it. If you want to make a career as an artist, you have to make sure that you are in love with the art. That's number one, because you'll never put the time, the effort, and the work in that will translate to success without it. So many people see the flashing lights, right? The bling bling, the cars, the whole lifestyle of other successful artists, and they're like, oh wow, that's what I want to do, because I want to make a bunch of money. It'll never work, right? But if you wake up every morning and you have lyrics going through your head, or you have a beat going through your head that you got to lay down, and you think about that all day, and you go to bed at night thinking about that, and you're just itching to get in the studio to make something, that's when you know it's for you. You have to live it. You have to eat it. You have to sleep it. You got to breathe it. It's got to be in your DNA. And if you answer that, and that's really your passion, then it's for you.
All right.
Guys, let's go. Daymond, I wanted to ask you a couple questions. I wanted to add on to some of the things that you talked about, the social media. You talked about how it helps, with business, and you're able to generate all this income. What about the risks of social media? If these kids, they're all out there showing or doing something that potentially may cause a reputational harm to them. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on social media and the pitfalls of it?
I thank God social media wasn't out when I was a kid. Because if you would have seen all the crap that I did, I wouldn't be here today. So we use services that scrape everybody's social media today. And so I can go back 10 years on somebody's social media, and I can put in the things I want to see or not. And if you said anything about whether it's violence or whether it's politics or various other things, I can scrape it because it never goes away. And we probably do not hire about 30% of the young, not even young adults, anybody. We don't hire them because we've pulled up on the services what they've said 10 years ago. It's kind of the better way that our parents used to say, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all. Use social media in purely your best interest. If you feel certain ways about people, things, or whatever the case is, say it at home. There's no need to say it on there. But on the flip side, if I look on social media and I pull up that this person is always talking about charitable organizations or bringing value to people, and I want that young person in my room, I want that young person in my office, because I want that person to come in and be excited and say, hey, what are we going to do tomorrow, and bring this fresh face. And I want my team to be like, man, that energy is great. Matter of fact, 80% of the people I hire in my company start off as interns. But of course, you have to be going to college to get college credit. And the reason why is because if I have a kid that comes to my company, they're in there before everybody who gets paid to be and leaves after everybody, and everybody's always like, where is that young man or woman? And they're depending on that person. Well, here's what happens. That person spends 6 months in my company, they leave, right? When we call that person back to say they want a job, they already know the company. They either say yes, or they go, I ain't like y'all, I'm gone. And we know who they are. So again, first of all, 30% probably people do not get hired because of the services that we pull up and scrape everything they've said. And we have had people that in the interviews we've said, why did you say this? And they said, I don't know what I was thinking. And they were like, I was responding to somebody else. And they said something so negative that I can never hire them. But on the flip side, we've had a lot of people that we put things in, and their social media wasn't that great, but we found out they had said so many amazing things about different things, and we said, well, we need them in there. But we're all watching you. We are clearly all watching you.
So I think it's great to say that social media should be a reflection of who you want to be. I guess that's the right way, and where you want to go, because everybody's watching. I think it's very important. And one of the main things that you said, and I think it's important to elaborate on, the first day when you sold $800 worth of hats, how long did it take you to say, I made it? Because for me personally, as an entrepreneur, I probably say it took me 10 years. But those 10 years were a struggle. Those 10 years were fight day in, day out, until I could say, hey, I can now go buy myself that nice car or whatever I wanted, right? What are your thoughts on your journey and how long it took? Because I think people want immediate satisfaction. I think today's society wants immediate satisfaction, and they don't realize the hard work and the time that it takes to get where we want to get.
Yeah, that first day that I sold those hats, I was 20 years old. By 29, I was facing being homeless. And then in 30, I had $20 million in the bank. It happened just like that. It took 10 years. And I think today with the advent of technology, I think it may take 7 if you're speeding things up. But yeah, it takes about, but at the end of the day, I got to tell you, I enjoyed the journey though while I was doing it. Just like Irie with the music and stuff, like I had such a good time. I didn't expect to get to any level. My friends and I thought that maybe we would have a boutique where all 4 of us could work. But before you know it, it was a global brand represented all over the world. But I had no idea. But yeah, it took 10 years.
I think it's important to know that there is no immediate satisfaction. These things do take time to be successful. Last question that I have is, you talked a little bit about bucket 1, 2, and 3, which I think is critical. I think there's so much pressure. Everybody has this social pressure to go buy the Louis Vuitton T-shirt, the Jordans, the whatever there is, and they lose the focus of number 1 and 2, right? They want to spend on number 3, and exactly what you said, it becomes a black hole that they can't get out of, the credit card debt. Tell them about when you started making money, what percentage? For me personally, I probably invested 80% back into my business. Because I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. I said, this is going to work, but I just need to take all my money. I'm going to live a little bit of a thriftier life so I can invest and create that cash flow where number 2 now flows into 1 and 3 like you talked about.
Yeah.
Anything to add on that?
Any what?
Anything you want to add about how the social, everybody's desire here is to buy those sneakers. Everybody's desire is to buy those, my daughter loves Sephora, or whatever they want, the Jordans, the $1,000 Travis Scott sneakers, right? Everybody wants it. But sometimes you have to take that urge and invest in yourselves. I think, what are your thoughts on that?
It's hard because I think that as growing up, there is a lot of pressure, and I want to be realistic. I wish I could tell everybody, yeah, don't feel the pressure and don't feel like looking good. But that's a lie, right? I think we all face that to some extent. What I find, and before we get to the investment standpoint, is I find the best thing to do is, as I was saying about being an entrepreneur, is create your own, I tell everybody I'm dyslexic. Why? Well, then nobody can call me. If I can't read as well or whatever the case is, they can't say anything about it. I take it out of the room. I take the question out of the room. So, again, when I couldn't afford great things, you know what I did? I was like, hey, I go down to the Salvation Army or other places, and I can design things the way that I want to design them. You are letting it being dictated by somebody else. My stuff is flyer than your stuff. So I take it out of the room, and what I found is when I can take some of those questions out of the room of why I may not be chasing the materialistic things or doing all this type of stuff, or if I'm stuttering on TV and somebody's like, my wife always tells me, she teases me all the time. When I'm trying, I say, hey, honey, help me correct this. And she goes, Daymond, it's a simple word. Like the word because, I wasn't able to spell for I don't know how many years. So like, Daymond, it's a simple word. I said, honey, I'm dyslexic. That's like telling somebody with one leg, hurry up and run faster. It's a problem. I'm dyslexic. I take it out of the room, right? And so I do all that also with the materialistic things. Like, I got to tell you something. With materialistic things, you will never have a bigger wallet than anybody. In our world, we know plenty of people with cars, jets, planes, boats, and everything else like that. I know people that with their plane, they'll show off their plane, and other people will say, I will not get in my own private jet. I will not have a private jet that I can't stand in. That's a nice leer that you have. Or I know that, people with boats who say, well, look how big my boat is. And they say, but you can't land a helicopter on that boat. You see, if Mark Cuban woke up with my money, he would jump out the window. Right? And if Bezos woke up with Mark Cuban's money, he would jump out the window. So what I found is you can never top somebody. I remember I was at a house. It was funny. I was at a house, and this one woman was walking around, and she was like, oh, and this is this piece of art. And it was a beautiful house. But I could tell she was really outdoing it. And this one person said, man, you have a more glamorous house than Warren Buffett. You should be proud of yourself. And then she shut up. Right? Or when Robert walks around and says, yeah, look at all my watches. You know Robert on our show? He always has all these beautiful watches. And I said, Robert, man, you dress better than Mark Zuckerberg. You got a lot of money. I find don't try to keep up with people. And then, yes, then we go back to obviously the things where you can take that money and you can do things where you can pay off this stuff later on and invest in the things you love. But take the narrative out of the room, because you will never be able to keep up with other people's money and or materialistic things. And a lot of those people who show you those materialistic things, they don't have anything. Be very, very honest.
Do we have time for one more question? I want to ask one more, and then we're done.
Yeah.
Jen, one more question. All these kids, they all want to become entrepreneurs. In a few sentences, what's the best way for them to get started, if any? Any thoughts on that?
That's going to sound really warm and fuzzy and kumbaya-ish about you got to do something you love. You find a nice team, take affordable steps, learn to fail and fail fast. If it's not working out, take your ego out of the room. Close it. Start over. You will not necessarily, you will like some things about the business, and you'll find out you don't like other things about it. I invested in a restaurant one time because I loved the chicken wings at a business. I was like, this is great. It's going to be amazing. By the time I then dealt with the restaurant, with the staff and the cleaning and all the other stuff, I never went to that restaurant again. So, learn these things and get into businesses as much as you can. Take affordable steps, though. Because usually it's not about when you lay out the money or you lay out anything else. Invest time. When I first started, the 5 years between FUBU and Red Lobster, I knew the only thing I could do was make 50 calls a day. And that's what I did. For 6 months, I said, I'm going to make 50 calls a day. That was all I can afford. And I called 10 record labels. I called 10 manufacturers, 10 stores. And for the first 3 months, nobody picked up my phone call. After 3 months, they were like, you ain't going nowhere, are you? Nope, I'm going to keep calling you again. And what happened was, after a while, they were like, hey, listen, I don't have anything for you, but I was just at dinner with somebody last night, and I think I got somebody else for you to call. Can you stop calling me? Okay, give me that other person's number. And after that 6 months, I got to a certain level where I started to feel good, like I was onto something, and I increased it to 75 calls a day. It doesn't always have to be all this money and everything else. Now, that could be just DMs for what you have, what you're doing right now. I think Steve Jobs first DM'd like Dell, or he DM'd the guy from Hewlett-Packard, Steve Jobs, and asked for an internship. He didn't DM, he called him, He called him, and that's what started Steve Jobs. He just called the guy. So anyway, business is not always just setting up this whole thing. It's all the homework you're doing prior and the things that are at your disposal that you can apply.
No other questions, I guess. Irie, you want to add anything?
Yeah, go ahead. Just one quick thing, and then I know we can wrap it up. In the spectrum of life, you guys all have one incredible advantage. Do you know what that is? Anybody, what's the advantage that you have right now? What's the advantage you have?
We're still young.
That's right. That's right. That's right. You guys are at the point in your life where you can literally achieve anything. The difference is this. Some of you will say, oh, I'm young. I can do that when I get older. I can start later. And some of you will have a burning desire. Some of you will say, I want to get on this right now. The ones that say, I want to get on this right now, are the ones guaranteed to succeed at some point. Because even if you fail, you have enough time, enough runway to try again. So have that burning desire. Your youth is your advantage. Keep your advantage by starting now, all right?